This is She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. Your host, Kinsey Roberts, interviews incredible women in the wedding industry who are making their mark and creating success on their terms. Join the conversation.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 126 of She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. This is your host, Kinsey Roberts. Thanks for joining me today. My guest today is Paige Griffith, who is a lawyer by training, and she is a person that I am so pleased and honored to have met at Creative at Heart back in November, and we've become very fast friends. And you know that I am doing this 2019 goal planning series, and she reached out and said, you know what is always on the docket for businesses is doing a legal audit in addition to just auditing how your business is running. And I was like, I kind of had one of those facepalm moments and thought, duh, that is brilliant, Paige. So I brought Paige on today so she can literally walk us step by step through legally auditing our business here at the beginning of the year to see if there's anything that we need to change, clauses we need to update in our contract, how we can get out our 1099s. That's coming up very soon at the end of this month. If you're listening to this in real time, January 2019, listen in. Paige walks us step by step through this whole thing. And the best part is, I know this is a lot of information. We spend a lot of time together here. We just really walk you through doing a legal audit. It's not high level overview stuff. It is literally do this, then do this as far as legally auditing your business. So if this is a lot of information for you and you want to come back after you take notes and listen to the episode and go through it step by step, Paige has been kind enough to create an entire workbook that will take you through everything we talk about. So you don't have to take notes, download the workbook and just take yourself through the audit in your business. And then she does mention some clauses in this particular episode. I've included those clauses in the show notes, and she also has a really great shop where you can just buy specific clauses. So if you're happy with your contract, like I'm happy with my contract, but I think I need a new severability clause, I can go and grab that from Paige's shop. So I'm linking everything in the show notes. And if you need to know where to find the show notes, it really depends on what podcast player you're using. Just Google how to find the show notes in iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, et cetera, and you'll find everything there. For me, I listen in Apple Podcasts and iTunes. So really, if you're just listening to my show, just scroll up on the episode and you'll see everything below the play button. All right, let me tell you about Paige. She graduated in 2016 from the University of Montana School of Law with high honors and also holds a double BA in economics and political science from Pacific Lutheran University. During her time in law school, she started a photography business, and after a lot of hustle, late nights, and determination, it became a six-figure photography business in just 3 years. Paige has now combined her legal and entrepreneurial passions to help other entrepreneurs and creatives create successful and legitimate businesses. Her goal is to create a space where all small businesses feel protected and confident. I love that. The Legal Paige was founded in 2018 and is a virtual legal consulting firm for small business entrepreneurs. So as you can tell, Paige really knows her stuff. And I just love what she said. Her goal is to create a space where we can feel protected and confident. Isn't that what we want in our businesses? That's what I want. That's why our contracts are important. This legal audit is important. We go through a ton of stuff in this episode. Let's dive in, grab a notebook, or go ahead and just grab that workbook in the show notes from Paige, and let's get started. Here is Paige from the Legal Paige. Paige, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kinsey. Thanks so much for having me.
Hi, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to have you. Listeners, you don't know this, but Paige and I was lucky enough to meet her in person at Creative at Heart in November in 2018, and she hasn't been able to get rid of me since. So I'm sorry, or you're welcome.
I am very happy to have you as a friend. I feel like this magnetic connection with you the minute that I met you. So I am so excited and honored to be on your show.
Good. I'm glad. The feeling's mutual. This is going to be fun. I did the audit your business episode kind of a couple episodes ago, and Paige in her brilliant mind was like, what goes along really well with this is actually doing a legal audit of your business. And I was like, you know what? That is so genius. And yes, you are right. You can't really audit your business without auditing the legal parts. And Paige is here to teach us. I can't wait for you to share what you have to share with us. before we get started with that, though, we'll kind of give you an outline of the episode, you guys. But before we get started with that, Paige, I gave that professional bio there at the top of the show, as I always do. But would you just introduce yourself briefly to our listeners so they know who you are and where you're coming from?
Of course. So I am a wedding and portrait photographer in Western Montana. I have been doing that for about 7 years now and have grown a pretty successful business in Western Montana. I still shoot weddings, just not as many as I used to in the past. And that is because the drum roll here is I am also an attorney.
Surprise!
So, surprise! I do both things. And mostly my background consists of building a wedding photography business while in law school. And I kind of did that to get my creative juices flowing, get my, head out of reading and writing the law all day long. Lo and behold, and much to my surprise, I found out that I really loved being an entrepreneur and building a business. And during law school, I worked really hard in academia, super type A, worked, the only thing I cared about was my grades. And I worked really hard throughout my entire academic life to get, the job out of law school. And I ended up getting my dream job out of law school, which was clerking for a federal judge. It's kind of the sought after clerkship that most people right out of law school go into. So it's kind of like this transitional job for lots of new attorneys. Instead of jumping into a law firm or into the traditional law world, you go work for a judge and kind of see behind the scenes. So I was really fortunate, Kinsey, to be able to do that for 2 years. And I did that from 2016 when I graduated until 2018. And I just finished my clerkship at the end of August in 2018. And throughout that time, I was still running a full-time photography business. So I had 2 jobs and it was kind of crazy. And I don't really remember the past 2.5 years. But what beautifully happened is it came to light that I really wanted to combine those 2 passions of mine into one. And how do I do that? So I'm an attorney. I also love building a business and I also love photography. So I decided to create a virtual law firm instead of going into practice at a traditional insurance law firm or something along those lines. I decided to kind of go out on my own, become a solo practitioner and start my own law firm, which is called the Legal Paige. And I help other online small businesses. I also help, brick and mortar small businesses, but primarily businesses that mainly run their businesses online because they don't necessarily go into a brick and mortar law firm to talk with an attorney. So I did that. I combined my passions into one. I'm helping other entrepreneurs build their businesses in a legal and protected way. And then, of course, I'm also still a photographer, which is fun. So I work for myself. I get to do what I want to do all day long, which is awesome.
It is awesome. And what I like about this is that you were studious, you worked really hard, and you've really culminated in this business that's combining all of your passions. But what I love about it is that you really had to get into each of those categories. And that's what I love about online business in general and kind of this moment that we're in. And I've said it on the podcast before, but a lot of the jobs that people or even not the jobs, but the businesses that people have created who've come on the show like you, we could never have conceptualized these, many years ago, 10 years ago when we're dreaming what we're going to be when we graduate, we could not have conceptualized I'm going to be an attorney for online creative businesses.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? And it's just, we're so fortunate and it's so exciting. And I love that you have combined the things that you love, photography, helping entrepreneurs, being a lawyer, being that legal brain, and that's what you're doing. So that's really exciting.
Thanks. I'm so excited too. And you know what? It's awesome to talk to people that actually know what I'm doing because most of the time I just get deer in headlights. They have no idea what type of attorney I am. But that's okay. I'm educating people on what a virtual online attorney does. So
that's right. Well, and there's a lot of attorneys out there, I think, who will be very excited to switch to that, to our industry very soon once they realize that it's out there. I feel like that profession, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like that profession is slowly coming around to more modern.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. Many professionals, people who have a professional degree, so nurses and doctors and attorney or accountants, a lot of them are already in the online world and able to care for their clients and take care of them in the online space. So I think, in 10 to 20 years, you're going to see a lot more attorneys doing that as well. We just have kind of different, ethical concerns and professional responsibilities than these other professionals do. So it'll be interesting to, kind of see how the profession molds to this new online trend, obviously, that most businesses are going towards.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, and you'll be at the forefront of that, obviously. Okay. Tell us what we're talking about today. We're doing a legal audit, but I'm really excited about the structure of this episode because we have a couple of sections that we're going to cover. So talk to us about those sections, and then we're going to dig in.
Cool. So I'll just talk first about what a legal audit is, Kinsey, because I think most people know what a tax audit is. I hope you do. If you don't, that's obviously just when someone from the IRS or the state comes knocking at your door and looks through all of your finances to ensure that you've reported those correctly on your taxes. And most entrepreneurs and people in business know that they need to have their income and expenses all together. And I'm sure you talked about that on the previous podcast episode. And so a legal audit is similar, but I don't think it's as scary because I definitely think you can do it yourself. Obviously, an audit includes you probably need to have an accountant on your side, tax audit. But I always suggest that every small business does a legal audit every year. And it's really important that you do so because it really helps your business operate more profitably, efficiently, and with fewer legal risks. The funny thing is I looked up what a legal audit is online, and it's defined as an appraisal of an organization's operations to determine its compliance with the laws and regulations that apply to it. Well, that sounds scary. So
I was I'm nervous. I'm already nervous.
I don't want any of your listeners to be nervous. I like to think of a legal audit like an insurance policy. And we all have insurance in some facet in our lives. So you notice the cost right away. Like if you're hiring an attorney to do a legal audit, or you have to take out time in your schedule to do the legal audit, you're going to notice that cost right away. But you will reap the benefits like 100-fold if you discover and diffuse a big problem at the beginning. So that's what a legal audit is. We're just doing a reality check for your business.
I like it.
So that's kind of a legal audit. We're just going to go in this. I'm going to kind of walk your listeners through a basic legal audit, and that's for any business, but primarily for businesses that are about 1 to 2 years in. So I'd call those newbie businesses. People who have been mostly just working to build their business, build their income, get their name out there. Then we're going to go into a more advanced legal audit. So we'll build on those steps for people that are 2+ years into business. And that's more mature businesses that kind of need to get into a little more nitty-gritty of a legal audit.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's get started.
Awesome. Okay, so the first thing I want to tell your listeners is that I am going to give you guys a free guide. So I'm going to talk a lot about things that you may or may not know of. And I'm also going to have some check boxes and checklists in this free guide. So please feel free to download it as you're listening or after you listen so that you can kind of have this as a reference document.
Perfect. And Paige is going to give me the link to that document and I will put it in the show notes. So it'll take you to her site or her landing page and then you'll go ahead and download that. Now, if you guys are listening just really quickly, if you are like, where do I find the show notes? The easiest, fastest way for you to understand where to find show notes in your podcast app is to just Google it. How do I find the show notes and insert your podcast app here? If you are on an Android device and you email me asking me how to do that, the answer is going to be, I have no idea because I use an iPhone. So find the show notes in that way. It's very easy. Just do a quick Google search and you'll be on your way. So legal audit document in the show notes.
Yes.
Okay.
I Google everything. So Kinsey's 100% correct. I would just Google where your show notes are.
There you go.
So in this free guide, we're going to start with what documents you need to gather before you start your legal audit. So the first thing you want to gather is your contracts. Then any invoices that you like a template invoice that you would regularly send a client. The primary emails that you send to clients. Lots of people have like email template documents where they store emails that they're sending to their clients all the time. So you'd want to gather those. Okay. Any budget or financial statements or any past tax returns that you may have that would have those financial statements on them. Insurance documentation. So if you have a insurance policy like a CGL policy, just make sure you're getting those deck pages and policy pages that explain what your policy includes. You would also need to get your business documents, such as an LLC operating agreement or business name registration that you've done through your state. Then finally, I would suggest getting any employee documents if you have employees, such as an employee agreement, a handbook, or anything along those lines, and any independent contractor agreements that you've signed with any of your contractors that work for you.
Okay. In this part of the legal audit, do we need to get anything? What was I thinking? Well, I know you mentioned independent contractors, but I guess they're independent contractors. If we have been exchanging money with someone who maybe we don't have a contract, or they just did a few things with us, or maybe we used a service like Fiverr or Upwork, do we need to get that stuff, or that's irrelevant?
It just kind of depends. That's a great question, Kinsey. We'll go into this a little bit more when we get into the steps of your basic legal audit. But primarily you want to get employee or independent contractor documents for anyone that you've paid over $600 to.
Okay.
So that's for independent contractors. Obviously, if you have an employee, you're going to have all their documentation. But people, like if you're using a resource like Fiverr online, that's small payments that you've made to a business, which isn't necessarily a person who works for you as an independent contractor.
Okay.
So that those people wouldn't be contractors.
Okay. What else should we get?
Those are the main 7 that I have and will be listing in my free guide to everyone. So we're going to start there. And if other documents come up as we talk about them, I'll just make sure to note that in each section. But these are the main documents that you're going to need. I don't want to overwhelm people.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay. So we're going to first start with the basic legal audit. And every business needs to do this, not just businesses that are 1 to 2 years in. Every business should do this. There's just additional things that I would suggest more mature businesses do. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what those are. We're going to talk about contracts, your business structure, taxes, labor, health and safety, and insurance.
Okay.
So obviously, contracts are first. This is what most people want to talk about during a legal audit. I have my clients ask about contracts, and I review contracts all of the time. So a legal audit of your contracts really help you prevent customer disputes, and it cuts down your risk of anything like an unpaid fee that's part of your contract that's just been hanging out there for a while, any type of refunds or cancellations, or inevitably a potential lawsuit down the road. So what I would say is everyone needs to get their main contract out. So Kinsey, if you're a venue owner, you probably have like a very simple like contract that you use for all of your clients, correct?
I do.
Right. So lots of people in the wedding industry are using like one basic contract. If you have 1 or 2 or 3, like I'm a photographer, I also do some short films on the side. So I might have some amendments to my contracts or additions. Just make sure that you have all of your basic contracts in front of you. And then I would say, if you can, get a friend to come hang out with you. And this is going to be like the best coffee date or wine date that you've ever had, because I want you to have someone that is not in your business and could act as a potential client for you.
Okay.
And the reason is because and the reason is because we often have our eyes on this contract all the time, and we think that everything makes sense. But to a layperson or to a client who has never been in the wedding industry before, they're new to all of these contracts, they are probably signing contracts like crazy because they are planning a wedding. I want someone that hasn't ever looked at your contract before to look at it with you during your legal audit, because they're going to be able to provide helpful insight that you would never see.
So they're going to, they'll catch things, probably even typos.
Exactly.
You're just looking at it so often. So everything from a basic typo to, I don't understand what this means. What does that even mean? What am I signing?
Yep. So the main thing I want you guys to do when you're sitting down with your favorite friend, I suggest that you give them food or a beverage, because reading through contracts is oh so fun, is you're going to have a highlighter. And I just want you guys to first go through and read out loud every sentence in your contract and just highlight ambiguous or inadequate language that doesn't make any sense, or if you're reading through it, I bet your friend will catch that you've already said that above in the contract. That's called duplicative clauses. And so you want to ensure that your contract makes sense, doesn't have anything ambiguous in it, and is not duplicative. So you don't want contradictory clauses. That is where I would start with a contract audit.
Okay. And we want our friend to go through each contract. So I have a main contract, I have a rules and regulations, then I have a few addendums. If we can convince them, of course, do we want them to go through each of those?
Yeah. And
Okay.
This is one of the biggest things. If you don't have a friend to do this with you, that's fine. I just want you to have the contract printed out in front of you. That is the most important thing in the legal world. Is we do everything online nowadays. And obviously, as an attorney, all of our reading and writing is online as well. We're using applications like Microsoft Word. And we are trained to print things out because you oftentimes don't see typos or things that are mislabeled, or headings aren't correct, or it's not organized efficiently so that someone could look through and figure out, oh, that's the cancellation and refund clause that I really want to look at. So I always suggest printing it out. Even if you don't have a friend with you, that's going to help you with this step of highlighting and ensuring that things aren't duplicative or ambiguous.
Okay. What's the next step for us?
Okay, so the next step in your contract, these are my big three is what I call them. So like I kind of noted this as we were chatting, but ensure the headings of your contract, and that includes subheadings and clauses, are very clear, bold, and organized so it's easy to read. Every time, Kinsey, that I do a client contract review, I am not surprised to see that their headings aren't organized. I'm very confused. If I was looking for like a refund clause, I don't really even know where it's at, or it's mislabeled something like fees. And then I have to kind of like go through the paragraph if I was a client and figure out where the refund part of that is. So you can, as you're doing an audit on your contract, you can take out certain sections and make them into other subsections. So if your fee clause includes, how much your deposit or retainer is, when the next payment is due, and your cancellation fee, and, if they don't get their retainer or deposit back when they cancel, and their refund is all a part of that, it's very confusing to people. So you would want to take those pieces out and have it be a deposit clause, and then a refund clause, and then a cancellation clause, if that makes sense.
Okay. And should we be worried about the lengths of our contracts at all, or?
Yes.
Okay.
This is a great question. Great question. I always say short and concise is the way to go.
Okay.
So this is also something you would want to do. You're an amazing person with transitions, because my number 2 is make sure that your contract is concise and to the point.
Okay.
So a lot of times you're going to bulk up sections because you think that it looks better to have longer paragraphs, or you got the contract online and that's just how it was, or you copied this clause from a friend, whatever it may be. You should tweak your clauses to make them extremely short, to the point, and very readable to a layperson. What I mean by that is, if you're using a contract, say that you bought online, or you just found this clause somewhere online, which is totally fine, and lots of entrepreneurs do this, I just suggest that you go through it and ensure that that sentence is not too long, where it creates confusion to your client because it has too much legal wording in it. And in the legal world, Kinsey, we call that legalese.
Legalese.
So, legalese. So that's going to be in my little cheat sheet for everyone. Ensure that all of your paragraphs aren't too long. I would say like 4 to 5 sentences max, because what ultimately happens is you don't want your client to miss a paragraph or just scroll through. We're all guilty of scrolling through boilerplate language contracts where
Totally.
you just scroll to the bottom and press yes.
Yes.
And to avoid that, the best way to do that is to make them short and sweet and to the point. So people read them, their attention span is very small and they understand what it means without just reading the first 1 or 2 sentences and moving on. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Absolutely.
Awesome. And then my last big 3, number 3 is to ensure that the correct parties are signing the document. And
okay, yeah, dig into this, because there's so many questions around this for venue owner or for
Yes.
vendors in general.
Oh my gosh, so many questions. I get this all the time. I will let everyone listening know that I have a very simple philosophy on this as an attorney, and I think that you should be signing it with one person. The reason being is because you do not want to create confusion when it comes to who you're communicating with. And if you think about it I always try to think about it prospectively, like what's going to potentially happen in the future that I need to resolve now. And if you're having 2 people look at a contract and 2 people signing it, it's likely that one person could understand one point of the contract and one person couldn't. And so you don't want that confusion to arise. I think if you're emailing with one person, which is likely the bride, and they're planning everything, or if it's just whoever is the main point of contract for that wedding. So that is the easiest. And then I would say for people like a venue, or say like a wedding planner who has, a higher fee or a commission-based fee, if you want more security on your contract, then you would want to have both the bride and groom on there. And that's just to ensure that if something were to happen and you weren't able to remedy a situation with the bride, you'd always have the groom to go to as well.
Okay. I was wondering, so that's what we do now. We have them both sign. There's space for both of them. We send it to both of them. We require an email from both of them, not just one email for 2 signatures. But okay. Well, but even in our case, like if we wanted to just pare down to one person responsible, let me ask you this. What if I pare down to one person responsible and I get questions like, oh, hey, we both want to be liable? Is it okay to change my contract really quickly to include 2 signatures?
Totally. Yep.
Okay.
I think that's 100% fine. Lots of times, lots of times brides and grooms are, or just, the partners in the wedding are deciding to, sign on to one contract and pay for one thing, and the other's doing, another contract with another vendor. And that's fine as well. And lots of people and lots of partners just like to be involved together in the process. So I would just always say whatever your client wants, but I suggest for vendors to stick with one person because it creates less confusion down the road.
Okay. All right.
And then you're communicating with one person. And the other thing that people always ask is parents.
Yes.
Should parents sign the document? I kind of have a strict policy that I don't think parents should be signing any document. Because I don't think that they're party to the contract at all. You don't want to have an issue where a mother of the bride is telling you what to do. Say if you're a florist or you're a food vendor or even the venue owner for that matter. You don't want a mother of the bride or a mother of the groom telling you that they paid so that you need to do A, B, C, D. And then you've worked with the bride for, say, 12 months and you feel like you know what the bride would want. And that's when I say to my clients, just ensure that you're communicating with the bride or the person who's the signatory on the contract, that it doesn't matter if you're getting money from your parents for help. We just would prefer that you sign the contract because you're the one that we're communicating with and providing services to.
And then you deal with their issues if they are like wanting more decision-making power because they gave you their credit card number.
Yeah.
So that's the impetus is on them or the onus is on them to figure that out.
Yeah. And I would just suggest for for wedding vendors to just not, I don't want them to be party to who's paying for what necessarily. That should be, however they're paying with a credit card or getting money from, that should be the bride and groom's responsibility. And the vendor should be working primarily just with the bride or just with the groom.
I like it. Okay.
Keep it simple. I'm always saying simplicity is key.
Okay. I like
especially
this.
with contracts. And then I'm just going to reference these clauses here, Kinsey, so that we can move forward. But again, these will be in my free guide for all of you. But these are the clauses that I think every vendor should consider in the wedding industry. And then, of course, there's additional clauses for very specific types of vendors. But the main things you'll want to consider is a venue and jurisdiction clause. And that just means if a dispute arises, where will this dispute be adjudicated? And you would want to have that as your county and your state. A retainer and fee clause, obviously, for obvious reasons. You want to lay out what your fees are, be very clear on that. A cancellation and or a refund clause. Some people like to put those together and some people like to have them very separate. An entire agreement clause. That just means that the entire agreement is bound within the four corners of this contract. And so additional oral discussions that you may have had with your client aren't part of the contract unless they're not in there in wording. Force majeure clause. That's just kind of like if an act of God happens clause. Lots of people have those in their contracts and you should have one. An indemnification clause, that's for legal reasons and to indemnify yourself in case it was not your fault for something that happened at the wedding or with whatever service that you're or providing someone or tangible item that you're providing someone. Communications clause. Kinsey, you're the one that actually brought me to this clause and I love it. And that just includes all of your office hours and when whoever's signing the contract can expect to communicate with you throughout the time of the contract. So say from the time that you book to the time that the wedding's done. Lots of times people not only have their office hours, but then they include, 2 weeks before the wedding, here is what I need you to do. Email, if you don't get a response from me within 24 hours, then you need to call me, those type of things. Yeah. Make it very clear to people because what ultimately happens when a contract falls through is because communication fell through. So if you put in your contract what they can expect from you as far as when you will return emails, when you will return phone calls and texts. That is key to starting it out on the right foot.
I love this.
And two more.
You know what I feel about a contract?
Yeah.
Is I just feel sometimes I call it like, and it's not, and I don't mean this in a bad way because it's not. I just feel like it's such a pure form of communication. I just feel like it's kind of like the bad cop in this scenario. Like you can be the good cop, you can be super nice, but the bad cop is what's in black and white. But if you need the bad cop, that's a good person to fall on because they're going to stand up for you. You know what I mean? So you can, if you want to, if a wedding is 2 weeks out and in your contract it says that you'll reply within 2 hours, are you welcome to reply within an hour to deliver above and beyond service? Of course. But if you don't reply within an hour and you do reply within 2 hours and then you have this blowout, you have something to fall back on. And I just feel like that's what makes me feel so comfortable in my contract and why I feel it actually just makes me feel confident in my business because it's like I say, it's like a kind of the bad cop. Like I can be the sweet one and the nice one, but I do have rules and you have to read them.
Exactly. And it's setting a communication standard for yourself as well. Don't make yourself available at all times of the day and on holidays, and just don't do that. And so make it very clear to your clients that you don't need to respond immediately to them, and that you also have a life. So
yes.
That's why it's so important to put office hours down. The last two, Kinsey, are just a severability clause. That just means this is really, 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 really important for people who are piecemealing their contract together or haven't ever had an attorney comb through each clause of their contract, because it means that even if other clauses may not withstand a lawsuit or, they're illegal clauses, that all of the other clauses withstand so that the entire contract doesn't fall through, if that makes sense.
Okay, that does make sense. At first I didn't know, but okay.
Yeah, so it just means it can be severed into different parts. The contract can. If one is not a legal clause and the other one is in your state, then obviously the whole contract wouldn't fall through and all the legal clauses would still be a part of the contract.
Oh, smart. Okay.
And then finally is like a counterparts and facsimile signature clause. I see a lot of people not having this, and that's just because it's an online document. People just think a signature block is fine. It is. I would just say if you're doing a legal audit, you might as well add in an extra, an extra clause that would help you in case of risk later down the road. And so that just says that if you are signing online, it counts as like a handwritten signature. That they don't have to print off the contract, handwrite it, and sign it back to you. That both facsimile signatures, which is an electronic signature, withhold in a court of law.
Brilliant. Yeah. Checking that. Can't wait to print off your download because I need to add that to mine.
So those are the main ones. I don't want to go too much further into contracts. I could talk about all day long because I'm a contract attorney. But that's the main stuff. I think that's going to help every one of your listeners get started on a contract audit.
Agreed. I agree totally. That was fantastic. Thank you for digging in so much there. That's really helpful.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And okay, so let's move on to business structures. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go pretty quickly through this because lots of your listeners can find different resources on my website or blogs about business structures. But a legal audit always includes, are you using the best business structure for legal protection and for tax purposes? So again, this is the basic legal audit, which means you're 1 to 2 years into business. If you are just a sole proprietor, you definitely want to look more into this section of your legal audit. And that's because a sole proprietor is usually just someone who sets up their business, they file their business name with their state, and that's about it. They don't have really any legal protection. The risk is out there. They may not even have a bank account. They're just running their business because, they started it up. That's totally fine. And it's totally legal to do so. So I want everyone to know that that is 100% fine. But if you're a year into business or 2 years into business, I really, really want you as a sole proprietor to consider becoming either an LLC or an S corporation. And that is because they are taxed similar to the way that a sole proprietor is, which means that they're a pass-through taxation entity. So you don't have to file like all these different tax returns is what I'm saying. You will have your profits flow back onto your personal income tax return. And then you'll file that individual tax return or your joint tax return, whatever you're filing. However, unlike a sole proprietorship where you're leaving pretty much everything up for liability and risk, as in your personal assets, your business assets, anything like that, you have what's called the limited liability company bubble. And what that means is that if anything were to come up, like a lawsuit or any type of insurance claim or anything like that, your LLC operates in a bubble so that only your business assets are affected. So a sole proprietor would want to just take a look, do a legal audit, figure out how much they have in business assets, and then what you have in personal assets. If you have a house, if you have a car, if you have lots of things and items and electronics in your house, if you have bank accounts for your children, if you have Roth IRAs, if you are financially planning for your future, and that's all part of your personal assets, I highly, highly suggest that you become an LLC to protect your business from any risk and your personal assets from becoming a part of that risk.
Because if you don't have that LLC bubble, what happens is if you do have any legal action taken against you, then those personal assets, even if you're like, but I'm a wedding photographer, if those personal assets could become at risk.
Exactly. So they could sue you and potentially get money from your personal bank account.
Right. So if you're saving for like your kid's college fund, it could be from there.
Yeah, exactly. So ultimately what happens is it doesn't matter if you're a sole proprietor and you have all this money in various bank accounts, or a house or a car, then all of those are line items for what your assets are that potentially a legal suit or an insurance claim could go towards.
Okay.
And that's not good. Nobody wants that.
No. Yeah.
So just look at what your business structure is. If you're an LLC or an S corporation, awesome. You're doing good. I would just say if you're both of those, just ensure that you are keeping your finances separate. You have a business bank account, income and expenses is flowing in and out of that bank account. Reconcile any income and expenses that are flowing in and out of your personal bank account, because that's what's called piercing the corporate veil. And then in the legal world, you're acting as a sole proprietor because you're commingling funds. So if you're an LLC or an S corporation, you're doing great. Just ensure that your bank account is also ensuring that all of your income and expenses are coming in and out of it. And then if you're a sole proprietor, just look into whether you want to become a single member LLC or an S corporation. Kins, I'm not going to talk too much about S corporations because it's going to confuse the heck out of people. But that would be something you'd want to look into. I like to say the threshold is about 6 figures. So if your income is over 6 figures, then I would talk to your accountant about becoming an S corporation and seeing if that's beneficial for tax purposes.
Okay. And I think that's great advice. We can just cut that off there, because talk to your accountant and they'll dig into your personal business. Like, what a good little nugget. If you're 6 figures or more, that's when you should talk. Okay.
Yeah. I don't like to make it more complicated. So we'll just stop there. Just look at your business structure, and see if there's any liability related to your business structure.
I have one quick question about being an LLC, asking for a friend, air quotes. If you were commingling finances / piercing the corporate veil, which sounds super scary, Are you opening yourself up to more liability even if you are an LLC?
Yes, definitely. So the one thing that I would say is you're always opening yourself up for liability if your business account isn't the only place where income and expenses, or what I like to call the cha-ching moments, are happening. So if for some reason, this is why we're kind of getting, this is like the mix between a legal audit and a tax audit, is an LLC really only acts as a limited liability company if all of your business assets are separate from your personal assets. And so if something were to happen, and I've answered this on another podcast too, because I think it's a question that a lot of us have, like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was using my, business debit card in my wallet at the grocery store because that's all I had. I don't want people to freak out. That's totally fine. Like, don't leave your groceries at the grocery line. Like, get your groceries and use your business debit card. Just ensure that you're doing your bookkeeping, biweekly or monthly, and being able to see those line items that you need to reconcile. And just ensure that you're reconciling those appropriately and efficiently. Like, don't leave them till the end of the year. Ensure that you're, transferring that money from your personal account over to your business account to pay for those groceries. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, definitely. That makes total sense. Thank you.
Yeah. So if money or an account, say like your PayPal account, is linked to, say, your personal account, that would be something you'd want to find on a legal audit and change that for the future. So ensure that your PayPal account is linked to your business account.
Okay, that's a really good example.
Yeah. So those are just little things that you can do to ensure that your LLC is staying as a bubble and you're not piercing the bubble. That's a better term than piercing the corporate veil.
Oh, no, I do love piercing the corporate veil because it makes it sound real serious. And there's a lot of people going to change that tomorrow.
Yeah. So
right,
commingling funds is the biggest thing to avoid. So this also leads nicely into taxes, Kinsey. So I'm not going to touch too much on this because it really does have to do with the tax audit. But just at the beginning of the year, review your bookkeeping system, your financial records, and your tax returns. So new tax laws are rolling out this month. And so obviously that's going to change your state and federal tax deductions. And so you just want to keep track of your income from all sources. That's the biggest thing, is I think all of us online entrepreneurs have money rolling in from different areas. Not only checks, but, our CRM systems, PayPal. We have expenses coming out of like an Amazon account, also coming from our business debit card, whatever it may be. So just keep track of those. The biggest thing that I see wedding professionals oftentimes forgetting about until the end of the year, and since you guys are getting ready for your 2018 taxes to get filed, I would just think about this for your future 2019 taxes, is to begin this month tracking your mileage, keeping your receipts. The main things I see this for is gas and food. Lots of other times receipts can be itemized like on your bank account, or lots of times you're getting receipts in your email. But gas and food, I would just say you can find an app where you can snap that receipt and it'll keep it for you. If you start now, then you'll get that, as a habit into your workflow every day. Mm-hmm. And then I would say at the beginning of this year, just ensure, if you're hiring someone like an independent contractor, to have them fill out a W-9 at the beginning of the year, or when they first come on board at any point in 2019. And that's just because I see a lot of businesses scrambling right now to get Social Security numbers and addresses for independent contractors, because they need to file those by the end of this year, or by the end of this month for 2018 taxes.
Okay. All right. Smart.
Yeah, so turning to filing 1099s, I just wanted to touch on this since I asked you, Kenzie, when this episode would air, because I'm getting a lot of questions right now as an attorney when people need to file 1099s and if they can get extensions on those. So if you have hired any type of independent contractor, and again, we talked about this, if you have paid someone more than $600 in the year, that means that they need to be given a 1099 form. So as a business, you have to figure out what the total pay was throughout the year for that independent contractor. You have to report that to the IRS, the federal government, and to your state government. And then you are responsible as a business owner for giving that independent contractor a 1099 form. So I will have the link in the document for everyone. You can also, everybody just Google IRS 1099 form. I promise you it's the first thing that comes up. So you want to get a 1099 form. You want to fill it out, and it comes with those 5 copies. So 2 for your independent contractor, 1 for the feds, 1 for the state, and 1 for your records as well. And that is due by January 31st, and it's due every year by January 31st. So that's why people are scrambling right now. It's almost the middle of January, if you can believe it. And so people are like trying to get these 1099s filed by the appropriate time. So if you're getting your independent contractor's personal information prior to that, it should be a lot easier to file those.
Okay, I'm just over here making a note, you guys, for my graphic designer.
Yeah, that includes graphic designers. That includes editors for all of you photographers out there. That includes, some of your friends that you hired, but then you added up and they've worked for you for 3 or 4 months for $200 a month, and you're already over the $600 threshold. So be legal. Check and see if anyone's made over 600 and then file those forms. Usually your accountant files these. You can e-file them as well, but usually that's through like a TurboTax program or an H&R Block program. Accountants just do this through their own programs that they have. There's also like some websites. I did some research, and you can pay for a website online to do this for you.
So I have a question. This doesn't feel like an independent contractor, but so my graphic designer, independent contractor, and I get that. Yep. What about if I am paying for, I'll just use a specific example for myself. What if I'm paying for a restyle? I'm paying a company. They are graphic designers, but it's a service. It is a restyle of my website, which is over $600. They are a business. They are not an independent person, like one human. It's a business.
Yep. That's totally different.
Okay.
So that is just an expense that you would have on your expense side of your, budget for your finances. And that would just count as a deduction. So you don't need to, that's not a sole person who's acting as an entity, or they're running their own business. And 1099s are pretty much for people who are self-employed.
Okay. So pretty much, well, I mean, of course, always check within your state, but pretty much it's always for like an individual human being.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep. Great question.
What's up? What's next? Not what's up. Hey, what's up? How are you? And what's up?
Labor.
And what's next?
So the next couple are really pretty simple. Labor, again, this is just kind of an extension. Who are your employees? Who are your independent contractors? What are their duties? I just always like to do a legal audit with businesses at the beginning of the year on, is this person really an independent contractor, or are they an employee? And this is actually becoming more of an issue as tax laws are changing. So you open yourself up for liability if you have an independent contractor who is looking more like an employee to the IRS. And what that means is how much control do you have over the person? Are they able to work odd hours? Are they using their own equipment? Are they coming into the office? Are they traveling with you, or are they using their own mode of transportation? All of those things you'll want to look at. And if you're checking some of those boxes, and I'll put this in my document for you, and you guys, I also have like other freebies on, is it an independent contractor or an employee? If you're skirting this like gray area of whether they're an independent contractor, you may want to consider hiring them on as an employee, because the risk of you having to pay back taxes and getting fined for having an independent contractor who actually should be an employee is much higher than it is to just put the person on payroll. So just something to look at. We're going to stop there. I'm not going to go any farther, but just take a look at that. That's what a legal audit is for. Think about it. See if some boxes are checked in the employee world. The next thing, Kinsey, is health and safety. This is short and sweet too, but I just want everyone to be aware of them. This is always included in a legal audit. Obviously, it's not so much for like wedding planners or wedding photographers or videographers, but if you're a food vendor or you have employees, or say, you're a venue owner, anything along those lines, where you need to stay up to code with whatever new statutes or law are in place in your county or in your state. You just want to look at those and ensure that you're complying with the newest health and safety regulations. And that is pretty much all I'm going to say for that, because if you're one of those vendors, I would definitely have an attorney look into that for you.
That's so case by like specific by area.
Exactly. It's so specific. I can't really go into anything more than that.
Yes. Okay.
But
no, good.
Yep. That's pretty much it. I just want to put that on people's radar. The final thing for a basic audit is insurance. And I am mind boggled by people who don't have insurance. However, it's 100% fine if you don't. Just make sure you're self-insuring. So if you don't have a like commercial general liability policy, which is a CGL policy, if you don't have that as a business owner and you're saying you're like self-insuring, I really want to make sure that your savings account has a lot of money in it, because if something were to happen, you don't want to get stuck in the sand where you're not able to pay for anything, and it's going to become a bigger mess than necessary. So you want to review your insurance situation. Obviously, if you have a CGL policy or a business insurance plan, just ensure that you're covered for like every anticipated legal claim. See what the damages are on your insurance policy, what that coverage limit is. You might be at a point where say, Kinsey, you're a venue owner, you have much larger policy limits than, say, a wedding photographer would have. And so you just might want to, at the beginning of every year, look at those policy limits and see if you need to increase them, and then check with your insurance company and see what the changes in your payment is going to be and your deduction would be for that.
Okay. Now, when you have insurance, I mean, for me as a venue, I have a physical building. There's, 200 humans in it. So I imagine it's different than being a planner. But you said it was okay, like if maybe not for planners or photographers or whatever, but should they still have some sort of business insurance, especially if, like photographers, if they're bringing all of their equipment and their assets and stuff?
Yeah, there's different types of insurance policies for everyone. So many photographers just have like coverage for their equipment. But what a CGL policy is, and if you're a photographer listening, I would highly recommend you look into a general liability policy for your business. Because if you think that your equipment insurance is going to cover like bodily injury claims, or if someone trips, you're definitely wrong. You need to have just a general liability policy, and they're quite inexpensive and worth it. Like I said, if it's going to cost you $5,000 to put away to self-insure in a savings account, you might as well just spend the $500 to $800 at the beginning of the year to be covered for up to $1 million. That just makes total sense to me. Hopefully it does to you guys. But look at that. That's a great thing to look at. What is your insurance situation at the beginning of 2019? What can you do to move forward and prevent any unnecessary risk in the future? And then if you have insurance, just look at your policy. Take a look at, what you could change, like what your deductible amount is going to be. Ensure that you're covered for slip and falls or any similar types of liability like that.
Okay.
And that's it for insurance. We'll stop there. So we have finished the basic legal audit. Everyone just needs to dance around and give yourself a pat on the back.
You have legally audited your business.
You've done such a good job. I'm so proud of you.
This is the kind of stuff, though, even though it feels long, once you get started, it's something that is so easy. It's not so easy, but once you get started, it's that momentum really helps propel you forward. And then when you finish something like this, it's such a feeling of accomplishment, and you feel so much more confident in your business. I feel like just getting going, getting all those documents together and then finally taking the action. It really is something that feels incredible when you've achieved it and completed it.
Yeah, and just a couple simple steps, Kinsey, I think makes people sleep better at night. They're always just curious and wondering I don't know what I don't know.
Yes.
And what happens if something were to come up legally? I don't even know where to start. And so I'm kind of just giving you guys a really easy, simple blueprint on how to start. I'm not saying anything's going to happen. The likelihood of something happening is very small, but I just want you to be prepared, and educating yourself is the best thing you can do to prevent anything down the line. And knowing all of this is the key to the kingdom, because then you have the ability to communicate that with your clients.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so advanced legal audit. So everyone who's been listening, who's been in business for over 2 years, you want to do everything we just talked about plus some. So they're pretty small, just I think it's 5 things here really quick. The first thing I want you to take a look at and audit in your business is any unfair business practices. This is going to be very very state specific, which means that because it's for mature businesses, I would highly suggest you consult an attorney in your state because it really has to do with advertising and unfair business practices related to consumers. So many states have extremely strong consumer protection laws. It's been lobbied in every state. They are just on the rise. Consumer protection laws is where every lawsuit comes up. And I know this because I worked in the courthouse. So if people want extra damages and they're filing a lawsuit, they would probably go first to the consumer protection laws. Oh, and so so this is where mature businesses are okay, so what else do I need to protect myself from? If you're advertising, and mature businesses have more disposable income, so you're probably spending quite a bit more on advertising and marketing. And that means that you need to be in compliance with advertising laws and consumer protection laws. So you just want to chat with an attorney. That's a great start. If you've ever had an advertising issue, client confusion, if you've had any trademark confusion in your advertising, I would just ensure that you're complying with the law. And so consult an attorney in that respect. That's thousands of dollars in advertising. Maybe just take an audit of what you are conveying in your advertisements, all of the copy and the text that you're using, the photos that you're using, and just ensure that everything's truthful. There's really there's no other way that someone could take your advertisement than what you are trying to convey. And truthfulness is the key here. So you just don't want to have a deceptive advertisement. That's pretty much it here.
Okay.
And then the other thing I just wanted to tell mature businesses to look into is ensuring that your employment or independent contractor agreements have non-disparagement clauses, and look for if you want a non-compete or non-competition clause, or you need to add an amendment to your clause to include that for your key employees. So those type of agreements protect your business if, say, a key employee decides to go to work for a competitor or tries to take away your customers. And so if you're in business for a while and you've had someone working for you for a while, they have a lot of inside knowledge on your business. And so you just might want to take a peek at that and either have them sign a non-compete or talk with your employee or independent contractor on where they're at, if they want to stay with your company, if they plan to leave in the near future, those type of things.
How long, is there any kind of, I don't know, is there any kind of gauge to see like, oh, okay, Kinsey's been with us for, is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is there any kind of gauge to determine like, okay, it's time to have this chat with this employee?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Obviously, that's going to be a case-by-case basis, but I would say probably a year is a good gauge for everyone. At that point, you're not really hand-holding the employee or independent contractor anymore. They probably have a lot more knowledge about your business and probably could do a lot of duties without you even, telling them to do it. So I would say about a year is a good gauge for that, especially if you've given them raises, those type of things. That's a good indicator for looking into what their future may hold if they're going to leave. A non-disparagement clause, Kinsey, is really important for independent contractors in our world because we give people so much information about our businesses. A non-disparagement clause just ensures that if they were to ever leave, so it's very different from a non-compete. It's saying you can leave, but you can't talk bad about my business, or you can't say anything bad about us in the industry. And it's so important for online businesses because that stuff gets around very quickly nowadays. We have all kinds of social media and cell phones in our lives and computers and emails. So I think that's a really important clause to have for any employee or independent contractor.
Okay.
And that's it for unfair business practices. The next one is employee relations. So as you grow and as you mature in your business, you're going to experience more personnel problems. That's a given. So if you don't already, please build an employee manual because that's a great place to start. And you can do it at any time. It's okay if you didn't have it at the beginning. Just start now and, have that for the future. And you can have all of your employees sign it. So you want to have all of your rules and policies in one place. This obviously helps with potential employee communication problems. If there's any unfair labor claims that could come up, workers' compensation claims, overtime disputes or payment disputes, and of course, employee discrimination claims. A employee handbook is honestly the first piece of evidence that comes up in any labor dispute. So if you don't have that, I would highly suggest you get one because it's going to be in your favor to have one. It lays it all out. So it's not confusing and there's no dispute on what the policy or regulation was.
Okay.
And just, when you're hiring on employees, you're opening yourself up for discrimination and employment claims. As a law clerk and someone dealing with labor claims, I worked all the time on discrimination claims. So I think that sometimes we're naive to the fact that that is one of the biggest labor disputes in our country. And so just to keep yourself, on the up and up and ensuring that you're doing the right things. I don't want you to fret about having any of these potential lawsuits because I don't want to scare anyone. That's never my intention as an attorney. And I know some attorneys that are like, no, 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 don't do this, don't do that. You're going to get sued. That is not my practice, and that's just not my personality. So get an employee handbook and then ensure you're like doing 3 to 4 month reviews with all of your employees. Have some documentation on those reviews. Keep those documents in a safe place. If you have documentation and evidence, if anything were to come up that you did the right thing, you gave the employee warning and notice, and then you followed through on that, you had multiple meetups with them, you're documenting all of this, that's really, really important for us as business owners to ensure that we're protected if anything were to happen with our employees.
Okay.
I know that's a lot, but that's it on employee relations. If you're a mature business, I'm guessing you've got some employees jumping on board. So just think about that. The other thing I want you guys to look into is your intellectual property. I get questions about this all the time. Kinsey, I put this on, the advanced legal audit because I think it's really important that new businesses don't freak out about this so much. I'm like, unless you have the most unique name in the entire world that you absolutely need to trademark right away, like, please just like chill a little bit.
Just chill. Okay.
Because I think lots of people don't understand that it's like if you're using it in commerce, you still have a really good claim to be able to say, this is mine. Even if you don't have it registered, just registering it gives you like legal protection across the United States. So if you have established marks like a logo, or say over the past couple of years, you've been really known for like a motto or a phrase or a little ditty on your advertising or whatever it may be, you might want to look into getting that trademarked with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. If your name isn't trademarked yet and it's really, really unique, you might want to look into that as well. You also want to look into domain names. This is a lot of times people don't think about similar domain names that might be available out there that you could buy. They're cheap. They're like $12 to $15. And you could just buy similar domain names so you don't ever have an issue in the future with somebody using a website name that's very similar to yours and there being consumer confusion in that respect. And then also copyrights. So ensuring that your images are copyrighted. If you're a photographer, this would be good for you. Ensuring that you're having all of that metadata put onto your photographs, those type of things. Just reviewing and maintaining confidentiality with your employees, ensuring that they understand what your confidentiality procedures are. That's the main thing that I would touch on for intellectual property. A lot of people ask me about like if you have a trademark. So say you're a established business and you have a trademark or you've gotten your copyright registered, then I would suggest you definitely put like the symbols on those. You don't have to. It's the TM symbol, you know what I'm talking about, and the C with a circle around it.
Oh, yeah.
People are always wondering if they need to use those, and you actually aren't legally required to use those, but it's highly recommended that you do. And then I've had questions actually pop up in like the last couple months about like pursuing infringers. So like if someone is infringing on your copyright or you find someone that has a similar like business name, or I had a, client last year that had a very like literally had the exact same slogan as them. And they had it registered with their state. So you can get your trademark registered with your state and not with the federal government. You can do both. You can do one or the other. Just depends on how wide and far you want your trademark registration to be. You don't want to press the pause button on potentially telling someone that they're infringing on your on your trademark or your copyright. Even if it doesn't seem serious at the time. And Kinsey, I've had this question come up. They're like, oh, I don't really want to tell them. I don't want to create a lawsuit. I don't want to do anything.
Right.
I just make sure that you're actually doing something, because the failure to pursue that can lead to like a reduced value and strength of your intellectual property in the long run. So you want to ensure that you're constantly saying, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. That's what that means.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. So if you don't do anything about it, I mean, that's a really good encouragement though, because sometimes I know we don't want to be too aggressive or whatever it is, but that's great. I love it.
Yeah. So I'm not telling you to file a lawsuit. Like, whoa,
Right.
That's like step 10.
That's
Maybe
too much.
just like email them or call them and say, hey, I've noticed you're doing this. Could you please stop using this trademark or this copyright or this slogan, whatever it may be. That's about it for intellectual property. Short and sweet. The final two are financial transactions. So if you're a mature business, it's really simple in this respect. If you have, security interests, big mortgages, big business loans, large lines of credit, pretty much any of those, I want you to seek out an attorney, probably after year 2, after year 3, to advise you on various financial arrangements and help to assist you in negotiating loans, maintaining good credit ratings, those type of things. It's really important if you foresee yourself being in business for a while to do that earlier rather than later, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you have tons of interest in tons of various places and tons of different financial transactions, which is what it's called, happening all the time in your business, because those the snowball effect happens, and years down the line, you're still dealing with something.
Okay.
Yeah, just take a look at it, and if you're having large financial transactions dealing with your business, I definitely want you to do a legal audit with your attorney. And then finally, we're getting to kind of the big personal matters with mature business owners. Hopefully, startups and people who have just started their business or have been doing it for about a year are also like thinking about these things, because it's so important. And I'm talking about estate planning. It is a big need for entrepreneurs, and we do not live in W-2 world anymore, is what I like to call it. So we don't have like all of these human resource departments like taking care of like where our money is going. Like, are we planning for potential retirement someday? Are we planning for our kids' college funds? Whatever it may be. I'm guessing as an entrepreneur, just kind of doing the bare minimum when you're starting out, and that is awesome, right? Low overhead, ensuring that you're getting all of your bills taken care of. But at the point at which you've got some extra disposable income, I really want you to start thinking about estate planning. So what are, your life insurance arrangements? What are your entire retirement plans? Talk to a financial planner potentially at this point and start thinking about your family's needs and your business needs and where you can start putting and funneling money for years to come. If any of you are Dave Ramsey fans, which I am, I'm all about estate planning at the beginning. Dave, I know. I want to meet him someday, hopefully.
Me too. Dave, if you're listening, you're the man. Also, we want to meet you.
You are the man. We want to come hang out with you and talk. I have like 80 million questions for him, but whatever. I digress. So yeah, I really want you to look at, do you have a will? If you don't have a will at that point, when I'm saying this, look into getting a will. It's really important, especially if you have a family. I can't begin to tell you, Kinsey, how many people don't have wills. So wills, trusts, life insurance, retirement plans, that's all in personal matters. And that is literally the biggest thing that mature businesses could start on with a legal audit, is after you get through all of this, at the end of the day, how is this business going to be beneficial to your personal life? And so that is where I would end the legal audit.
That is such a good, I love where you ended that. How will this business benefit your personal life, and how does it leave a legacy?
Yes.
If that's what you want it to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you want it to benefit your day-to-day life now, but I think people that's why people love the security of jobs and working for a business and having your taxes taken out and, having all of these benefits that is included with that. We oftentimes forget about those as entrepreneurs, and we just kind of move those, to the back burner. And then 5-10 years down the road, we start thinking about it, or, in lots of cases, you don't think about it until 5 to 10 years before retirement. And that's getting to be too late. So don't do that.
That's true. And we also don't think about different ways to, we may not always want to do this. Like, I think for myself, I'm 31. I know I don't want to be 40, and that's only 9 years away. I don't want to be 40 at my wedding venue every single weekend. That's just not what I have planned in my life, but I still want it to be an asset for me. So this asset planning is so valuable.
So valuable. Yep. And that's where a financial planner will help you with that. And an attorney as well, and an accountant. All the things.
All the things. Paige, this has been such an incredible episode. I'm blown away by I'm not blown away because I know you personally and I know how amazing you are, but I'm blown away just by the sheer value you brought to this episode. It is, if you are listening to this right now, you know what I'm talking about. Everyone is nodding their heads right now. I know that for sure, especially if you printed her download and you have been following along. So I know I can speak for everyone listening when I say thank you so much for being here. It was extremely helpful. I made a list of things I'm going to do and check. Where can everybody find you online?
Well, thanks again, Kinsey, for having me. I really appreciate it. And I just hope this is helpful for everyone listening as well. If you need any further questions answered, or you want to look into any other free legal tips, you can head to my business, which is paigemarie.com. PAIGEMARIE. It's very simple. That is my new combined platform for the Legal Paige and my photography. So you'll be able to find all kinds of free legal tips there. There's all kinds of other helpful free downloadable guides. And I have all kinds of other podcast episodes that people can listen to where I've been on other podcasts. So hopefully in the future, Kinsey, I'll start my own podcast. We'll see. Maybe a YouTube channel, something like that. For now, we've got blogs and freebies, everybody. So head on over there. I'm also Paige Marie Griffith. Griffith is my last name, GRIFFITH, on Instagram.
Perfect. And all of these links will be in the show notes, you guys. So grab your download, find Paige, hire her, ask the questions that you have. She's amazing. Paige, thank you so much. I hope you have a great night.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to She Creates Business. Please take a minute and head to iTunes to leave an honest review so we can help more wedding pros find the show.